Hello, this is Johnny Cycles with CyclesGaming.com, here bringing you another edition of Murders at Karlov Manor in Commander. Today I'll be discussing my mono white prison deck with Heliod Sun Crowned. But first, here's my website, Cycles Gaming, all about Magic of the Gathering. Uh, Click here to read about original content on modern decks that I've been playing, some super janky builds, are my Commander decks that I've been working on, are my fantasy science fiction novel that I'm publishing serially. So uh, check it out. Check me out on YouTube as well. Click that like button and subscribe button. All right, let's get into it. So Murders at Karlov Manor for my mono white prison deck. If you remember, and if you don't, you can click here on the link to read the original article about the deck. We're essentially looking to hate our opponent out of whatever strategy they are looking to employ to win the game via a variety of hate pieces, mostly on creatures, so that we can grow them with Heliod Suncrown and then attack in. Um, we play, I don't know, we cast a wide net looking to hate on all kinds of strategies. So we have ways to hate on artifacts. We have ways to hate on things entering the battlefield untapped. We have ways to hate on ETB effects. And the list, ways to hate on graveyard strategies. And the list goes on. So there are some drawbacks from of a strategy like this, in that we could just end up drawing the wrong piece of hate against our opponent and die. But it's a really fun deck, I think. It has a lot of power. It can keep you on the razor's edge between life and death for a long time before you turn the corner, and so it can be exciting. And Murders at Karlov Manor bring us a few new pieces that should be included, and I'll discuss ones that could be included and others that might could be included. So let's get started. The deck list is there for your reference. So the first card is Doorkeeper Thrall, one colorless and a white on a 1/2 body with flash and flying. It says artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. ETB enter the battlefield triggers are super popular in all formats of Magic because it gives you an immediate 2-for-1. You get a creature and you get something else out of it. So even decks, commander decks that aren't looking to fully abuse ETB triggers, like Panharmonicon decks and other such cards that are looking to double up on these triggers, they will be playing creatures that do things when they enter the battlefield, just simply because those are the best creatures in the format typically. And we want to stop that from happening. We want to be the ones that are executing our game plan, not our opponents. And so Doorkeeper Thrall is another card that hates on the strategy, or just this effect. We already play, I think, 4, if not 5, so this will give us another one if we want to make room for it, or we can just replace one of the ones we have already, because Doorkeeper Thrall brings something to the table that we don't have yet, and that's hating on artifacts, ETBs. The first that came to mind was Soul Guide Lantern, that lets you exile a card from a graveyard when it enters the battlefield. That might be irrelevant sometimes. Not the most powerful, but Doorkeeper Thrall would stop this from happening. One of the more common cards played in Commander, Solemn Simulacrum. This would also stop the opponent from being able to fetch up a basic land and putting it on the battlefield. So that would help stop their ramp plan. And there, I'm sure, dozens of other artifacts that do things when they enter the battlefield. You can tell me about them in the comments, the ones I'm forgetting, the most powerful ones, the most obvious ones. Well, Doorkeeper Thrall hates on all of those and shuts those down, those ETBs. And that's a powerful effect. I think in my current build, I might cut the Hushwing Grift, which is 1 mana more for a 2/1 flying with flash rather than a 1/2, but it doesn't stop artifacts. So that would be an obvious swap out to make room for Doorkeeper Thrall. Definitely will find room. I might just want another one of these cards in general, and I'll cut from somewhere else. It's up to me. It's up to you. It's your deck, right? All right, next, Trouble in Pairs. This is from the Commander Precon. I haven't really talked about these cards yet in these videos, but this one's so obvious and so powerful that I'm going to discuss it. 2 colorless, 2 white. It's an enchantment. The first part of the text, if an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. The second part of the text is, whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card each turn, or casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. So there are going to be some players who are looking to chain together extra turn spells, and we don't have any way to hate against extra turns, so this is a new piece to our deck, and that's great. I mean, in my play group, we typically eschew playing a bunch of extra turn spells, although at least one person has one deck with Narset that is looking to take extra turns, and it's very salt-inducing. It's very powerful. It's very annoying to play against. So this would give us a little bit of interaction with that, a way to stop their game plan there. It's really the second part of the text that is so powerful and why this card is $20. And it's just a really good example of Wizards really trying hard to give white more card draw. So we get to draw an extra card just for our opponent executing their game plan. They attack with a couple creatures, we draw an extra card. They cast a second spell, we draw a card. They draw an extra card, we draw a card. So theoretically and probably in reality, we can draw up to 3 cards a turn if our opponent does all 3. So this card is super busted, super powerful. Definitely going to find a spot for it, simply because we get to refill our hand in response to our opponent just executing their game plan. Sure, there will be times when our opponent plays around it or is able to keep us from drawing very many cards, but if they're already playing around it, that means they're not attacking us with 2 creatures, which means we're probably stabilized and having the turns we need to draw naturally into what we need to either fully hate them out of the game or to turn the corner and start attacking ourselves. So in a way, it's either going to refill our hand and give us action, or it's going to keep us alive until we find that action. So I really like Trouble in Pairs. Definitely going to find room for it. It does add 2 to our devotion, which is a plus. And it's an enchantment if you want to if you're going the Sphere of Safety route for your prison deck, where you're playing a lot of enchantments to stop combat from happening. This would slot easily into that. Cards that could be included, assemble the players. This one's right on the border of should be included, and to be honest, I will test this card out in my deck. I really like it. The reason why it's not in should be included is because I need to tweak the mana base to find room to add fetch lands. Because I think we need to evaluate this card based on the first line of text. So let me read it to you. 1 colorless, 1 white. It's an enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Once each turn, you may cast a creature spell with power 2 or less from the top of your library. So I think we really need to evaluate this from the top line of the text, that we can look at the top card of our library at any time. Is this a powerful enough effect to warrant a spot in our deck? And I think the answer is yes. And part of the answer is, and the reason why I say yes is from what I was discussing earlier. We cast a wide net looking to have hate cards against all kinds of strategies, and sometimes you draw the wrong piece of hate and you die. Well, this gives us some ability to filter our draws. If we see that we're drawing hate against graveyards, but our opponent has no interest in their graveyard, and we have enough shuffle effects in our deck, we can play a fetch land, fetch it, or crack it, go out, get a land, shuffle away that useless piece of hate, and hopefully have something better on top of our deck after we shuffle. Is it a guarantee? Of course not. But it does give us some flexibility there, and it gives us a way to address the issue of sometimes just not having the right piece of hate for the right matchup. So I think that is why I'm so intrigued with this card, and one reason why I want to try it out. I just need to put in more fetch lands. I think we can probably get up to 6 or 7 without it really hurting the consistency of our deck or slowing us down too much. That would give us plenty of ways to shuffle away whatever's on top that we don't want. Now the second part of the text is also pretty relevant. We play 21 creatures that we can cast off the top with the second part. So in theory, that's 1/5 of the time, right? Every 5th turn, we should be able to get extra value out of it. That alone is tempting, is a good reason to put it into the deck. I don't think it's enough, though. However, the 2 boxes of text together make this definitely intriguing, definitely something I'm going to test out. Let me know if you test it out and what you think of it and how well it works in your deck. The next card that could be included is Case of the Uneaten Feast, 1 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature, this is one of the new cases. Starts out unsolved, we do some jump through a hoop and it becomes solved. So the unsolved version with static ability after it enters the battlefield is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. To solve it, you've gained 5 or more life this turn. And when it's solved, you can sacrifice this case. Creature cards in your graveyard gain, you may cast this card from your graveyard until end of turn. And by the way, I misspoke. It's solved, sacrifice this case. It's not a may, so you don't get to pick the time if you've solved it when you get to sacrifice it. As soon as you've gained the 5 life, you go to your end step. And then you beat the beginning of your end step, you sacrifice it. Which is interesting because you sacrifice it at the beginning, you solve it at the beginning of your end step, and when it's solved, you sacrifice it. And cards in your graveyard gain, you may cast this card from your graveyard until end of turn. So I guess you have until your next turn to cast it. So you will get to untap and cast those creatures from the graveyard. Anyway, let's talk about the first part. I think we need to evaluate these cases based on their static ability, their unsolved portion, and gaining a life for each creature that enters the battlefield under our control is a powerful effect. Synergizes nicely with our commander. I think you could easily find room for this if you're kind of going the life gain angle to correspond with your prison strategy. For us, it's more of a sub-theme. I've cut out a lot of the life gain cards that were in the deck originally, like Soul Warden and Soul's Attendant, in part because I have my own green-white life gain deck, and so that is a strategy I'm playing elsewhere, so I've reduced the number of cards that just strictly gain me life. They need to gain me life and do something else, typically, be another piece of hate, like Blind Obedience. It's still a sub theme. We still want to gain some life in order to trigger our commander, but it's not such a big part of our deck as it used to be. However, if you are playing a deck that has a lot more life gain in it, that's really looking to abuse that synergy between life gain and Heliod, then I would definitely put in Case of the Uneaten Feast. Low investment, a single mana. It's an enchantment. It's more difficult to deal with. You can gain a whole lot of life over the course of a game to get a whole lot of triggers. I wouldn't count on getting things out of your graveyard with it unless you really are a graveyard-centric deck. There'd be instances where we have our own Rest in Peace out and it's a non-bow. The dream, of course, is that somehow we've gained our life right after a board wipe and then we're able to rebuild. I just don't think we can count on that. Also, one of the drawbacks here is you solve it, you don't necessarily have control of when you solve it. Sometimes you gain that life, especially if you have something out like Soul Warden that gains you life anytime a creature enters the battlefield. Your opponent might have 5 creatures enter the battlefield in a turn, and then suddenly you've solved your case before you're ready, before your graveyard has any creatures in it. And so that part of it is outside of our control to a certain degree, which is another reason why I think we should just evaluate this on the top part. So, like I said, could be included if you're looking for more life gain, and that's one of your main synergies and one of your main angles of attack. Finally, we get to might. Could be included. Aurelia's Vindicator, 2 colorless, a 2 white, angel, 4/2 body, flying, lifelink ward, disguise X, 3 colorless and white. When Aurelia's Vindicators turn face up, exile up to X other target creatures from the battlefield and or creature cards from graveyards. When Aurelia's Vindicator leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to their owner's hand. So the best analog for this is Angel of Serenity, which is 7 mana, does the same thing, but on a 5/6 body. So I don't think I wouldn't put this in our deck. I would only include it in a deck looking to abuse life gain, like I mentioned with the last card, or abuse graveyard shenanigans, or just looking for the flexibility of having something to fill the 4-drop spot, but also has some late game power or flexibility if you draw it late with a lot of mana. Because you have to disguise it for 3 colorless. You get a 2/2 creature with ward, and you to get its exile effect. I guess it's really weird. I don't know how to talk about this. So you cast it as a face down creature. Is that disguised? That's what makes sense to me. But then the text says disguised. So then that's the mana you pay to undisguise it or to flip it up. So anyway, I think there's some semantic issues here that make this awkward to talk about. But essentially you're paying, if you want to get the same effect of Angel of Serenity, you have to pay the 3 mana first to put it face down and then the 7 mana later to turn it face up. That's a lot of hoops to jump through because you also have to hope that there's no board wipe that kills your creature along the way. So too slow, too unimpactful, I think, for our deck. Could find a home in certain decks, but not in ours. I think I'm most excited about it for my Boros triple keyword deck where all the creatures have 3 keywords because this one has 3, so I'll find room for it there. Next and last is No Witnesses, 2 colorless, 2 white. It's a sweeper. Each player who controls the most creatures investigates, then destroy all creatures. So when I first read this, I was thinking, oh great, it's card advantage on top of a sweeper. That's great. I think that's an auto upgrade to a lot of sweepers that are already out there, and it's at 4 mana. But it's whichever player has the most creatures or has tied for the most creatures. So your opponents will be getting that clue some of the time, and it's only a single clue. It's not like you're getting a clue for each creature. So you're getting a single clue, and there's a good chance you'll be giving it to your opponent. Because when do we really want to cast a sweeper? When we're playing catch-up, when our opponent has a big board. So more than likely, we cast this, we do get to wipe the board, but then our opponent gets the clue. So we're not really gaining the card advantage out of it, which means white has many better sweepers than No Witnesses at 4 mana, Wrath of God, Day of Judgment, to name 2, that don't have this sort of drawback for us. And then if we were to get a clue out of it, then that means we're ahead on board on creatures, and so we're less likely to really want to cast a sweeper when we're already ahead on board with creatures. That's not always the case, of course. Like the extra turn deck I mentioned already, Narset Enlightened Master is the type of commander that must be answered, and you will sacrifice your creatures in order to to wipe it away with a no witnesses or any other board wipe. So there will be instances where even though you're ahead on creatures, you want to wipe the board, and this card will give you that added bonus of an additional card that you can draw off of it. So I think for me, definitely not going into this deck. I could see including it if you just need another sweeper, maybe you're on a budget, or you have some sort of artifact matters shenanigans going on in your mono white deck. All right, well, that's all. This is Johnny Cycles with cyclesgaming.com. Thanks for reading. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think. Did I miss anything? Are there cards that I should rate higher? Should definitely find room for? Which cards are you most excited about? What cards are you looking to slot into your mono white deck, whether it be prison or otherwise? All right, thanks again, and I'll catch you on the next one.